Uh, Good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to have you all in here, both the participants and the attendants to this debate. I would like to welcome you on behalf of the Ateneu Barcelonès, and in special la secció d'Estudis Polítics, Jurídics i Socials, as today's debate is framed within a series of conferences that we are leading with the name Europa en Joc or Europe at Stake. We are also very happy to have co-organized this debate together with JEF Catalunya and with the collaboration of the Radio Centreville, the Barcelona Center for European Studies in la Universitat Pompeu Fabra, the European Union Society, and the More in 24 project. As an initial disclaimer, the debate is going to take place in English, as it was already announced. This is due to the fact that in our initial agenda, most of the participants were international and thus non-Catalan speakers. Due to last-minute changes in the agenda of the European Parliament, the composition of the debate has slightly changed, yet we still have some international participants next to the Catalan or Spanish ones. So today's debate is going to be structured as follows. After these brief words, the president of the Catalan European Movement Council, Jordi Xuclà, is going to welcome us as well, and after the JEF Catalunya president. Right after, the Centreville radio journalist François Joves will make an hybrid interview with the Vice President of the European Parliament, Rainer Wieland. Right after, the candidates will come to the stage and we will do the proper debate, which will be closed by the Catalan Foreign Affairs Minister, Meritxell Serret. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much. To invite us. Just to address briefly some words. First of all, let me to congratulate the organization of this event, all of this international network. We can say that today Barcelona is one of the European capitals of the debate, the ongoing debate about the future of Europe and the next European elections. Secondly, let me to explain briefly what about is the European movement and the Catalan Council of the European movement. 76 years ago, the beginning of the European construction starts in The Hague, in the Congress of Europe in Hague. This was on May 1948, and this was the first big gathering of pro-European and pro-democrat citizens around Europe who met in Hague and who decided to deliver some first steps and instruments of the European constructions, as the Council of Europe, the College d'Europe, and other instruments. And the organizers of this Hague Congress was the European movement. And then European movements start with the different branch in the different capitals. Spain was under the dictatorship, Franco dictatorship, and the founding of the Spanish and the Catalan and the Basque movement of the international movement was in Paris. Last February was 75th anniversary of the start of our movement. Finally, I want to say that this year we have 3 very important elections in the world. Elections in India, elections in US, and elections in European Union. We don't pay a lot of attention about elections in India, maybe because India don't want to play a geopolitical role for the moment in the geopolitical relations around the world. We pay a lot of attention about what is going on in US, and really it's crucial to have notice and to see how we'll finish the year regarding the situation, the political results in US. But from my point of view, exactly at the same level of the American elections, we have the European elections and the construction of Europe. The European movement is a non-partisan movement. It's a non-partisan movement, but is a pro-European movement. It means that we defend the federalism in Europe, and the federalism in Europe, it means the more integration and enlargement in the European construction. And we defend the pluralism. And it's for this reason that in front of the next European elections, we only say, please go to vote, please go to express your support to this or the other party, and please, we are in favor of the pro-European parties, we are in the favor of the pro-European ideas, we are against the Euroscepticism, and we are against of the fake news, we are against of the populisms in front of the European construction. So, thank you very much for this event. Thank you very much for Barcelona as a capital of the European debate today, and all the best. And finally, at the beginning of this event, we plan to start at 4. At the end, we start at 6, and we must leave in some minutes. So sorry for this, and I wish all the best. Thank you very much.
So, good evening, everybody. It's a great pleasure for me to be with you tonight at that event. My name is François Roberge. I'm a radio host in Quebec, in Radio Centre-Ville. And we have a special guest tonight, a member of European Parliament, one of the Vice President of the European Parliament. So we will make a short interview. I will make a short interview with him, and then you can see more than usual the importance to vote, because in less than 2 months you need to vote, because it's really an important election. So, with us, it's Vice President of European Parliament, Rainer Wieland, is welcome with us tonight. So, Mr. Wieland, it's a great pleasure to be with you this evening. Thank you very much, and you are really welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the kind words, and my best regards to Barcelona.
Nice. Mr. the Vice President, simple question. Why is it so important to vote in June? Because a lot of people say, well, European Union, European Parliament, European Commission, it's far from my reality. Are you agree with that?
Well, I mean, I think it would be not normal if higher levels have more difficulties to come into close contact with people on the street. I mean, we have 705 members for 450 million Europeans. So it's not easy to keep contact. And I'm privileged. I come from Stuttgart in southwest Germany, and I have some 150 kilometers to Strasbourg. So in the top years, I have more than 100 visitors groups. And in the 25 years I'm in Parliament, I had well beyond 100,000 people in Strasbourg with me. And I really try to get in contact with everybody. And it's the extreme, exceptional case when I do not receive the group personally, because due to another obligation. My people are doing that, but this is really the rare case of, I would guess, less than 2%. But it is difficult. And let me say, you're talking about Europe, but let me say very open, politics begins at your front door. Politics is important because it is what concerns you and yourself and your community. And I started my political work in local politics. I was 14 years a councillor, and a lot of things we dealt with there had nothing to do with blue, green, red, or white, or yellow, or whatever. It was resolved solidly and sufficiently, or it was not resolved. So, so it is difficult for all levels. And for Europe, I think it's important to understand that the main deal, the main benefit for the youth is that we have a united Europe. I do not want to be so posh or whatever, but in my region, 110 years ago, young people went happily into a war, yeah, and less than a whole generation disappeared. And 100 years before that, from my region, Württemberg, 20,000 people went with Napoleon to Moscow. Less than 1,000 came back. So it is a privilege for my children, born in 1997 and 1999, that they can grow up in a century which starts like the century before ends, and not that they have to start like the century before began. So this is for me, this is a main point. And you ask why it is important, and it's important for everybody. And young people, I try to explain. I put a question: who has the largest interest that you do not go vote? Who has the largest interest? The largest interest have that political force which knows that you under no circumstances will vote for them. Those have the largest interest that you do not go to vote. And with not going vote, you support vice versa, them most by not joining the vote. So take part, be part of the decision, and inform yourself, and take the judgments of yourself and not the judgments of others.
Tonight we will talk about the future of young people, but because we talk about young people, do you think it's important that in European Parliament there is young people as a member of European Parliament? Do you think it's important that young people go on election?
I'm not sure whether I got the whole question. The advantage is that Europe exists, that you can have your life on the continent, that you can go to Ireland, to Germany, or that you can stay in Spain, and you have less borders and you have more possibilities than all the generations before. I cannot imagine that one of my ancestors would not happily change position with me. So we have to see that. And beyond that, it's possibly difficult to get concrete political topics which are for young people. I mean, one of the most important things for young people is education. And the responsibility for that is deep in the responsibility of the member states. What we do is we deliver programs. So a lot of people are talking about the generation Erasmus. A lot of people, and more than in 30 years ago, not only students, also craftsmen people are able to join Erasmus programs. And this is an important topic. For the European Union, it's very difficult to address things like youth unemployment in different countries, because in most countries they have a different level and they have different reasons. So I personally, I'm very reluctant to make promises. So the advantage for young people is that Europe works as a single market, as a project of peace, and as a place of innovation.
Nice. So, last but not the least, Mr. the Vice President, election after election, people going to vote, but it's not a very popular election if you compare with national election of every country. Do you think this year people will vote more than usual?
We make twice a year we make polls in each member state with thousands, so it's representative, and all the figures we have from last autumn are that 6 to 8% of the, in comparison with the respective level 5 years before, 6 to 8% of the people say more that it's a good thing that my country is in the European Union. And about 8%, again, against the respective level 5 years before, 8% more than in 2019 said, or end of 2018 said, I'm decided to go to vote. So we should care for everybody. We should try to convince people to go to vote. But on the other hand, I clearly say that I'm not ready to. I'm not ready. I do not believe that Europeans should join the blame game against themselves, because if you look to my country, the turnout on the elections of the Bundestag and the Landtag, it came down over the last 20 years. And if I look to my local elections, the election of the Lord Mayor or the Mayor, in average is less than the turnout in the European Union. And nobody would say a mayor is not, has no legitimation. So we should care that as much people as possible go to vote. But I think we should not enter a self-fulfilling prophecy that a difficult turnout brings a difficult Europe.
So, Mr. the Vice President of the European Parliament, Rainer Wieland, thank you very much to be with us tonight, and it's a great pleasure.
You're welcome, and sorry that I was not able to go to Catalonia. And if I give you an advice, if I may give you an advice, don't believe me. Listen, but think by your own. Make your own decision, your own judgment. Listen, but take your own decision. And this is the best way to find your way through in politics in your country or in the European Union or elsewhere. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Please to the candidate who can already come to stage. All right, hello. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Barcelona European debate. Thank you for being here. As you may realize, we are still waiting for one of our candidates who is coming straight from the airport and whose flight was slightly delayed. But anyways, due to time constraints, we suggest we begin. So, thank you. We hope that this is a space for a European perspective of the debate as well, not only a young perspective, but also a European one. And in order to achieve that, we hope that there's full of respect and also, at the same time, a lot of interaction and real debate amongst you. Today we are joined by representatives of the four main European political groups in the European Parliament, which are the EPP, Socialists and Democrats, Renew Europe, and the Greens, IFA Alliance. Lastly, the Greens IFA Alliance will be represented only by one person. And my name is Paul Villaverde, together with Marta Aldumà from the section of Political, Legal and Social Studies at Ateneu Barcelonès. We will be moderating this debate, which will work in a very simple fashion. We will have three main blocks or three main parts. Firstly, we will begin by debating the political priorities for the next European term, 2024 to 2029, and also doing some examination of how von der Leyen's Commission went in these last years. Secondly, in the second part of the debate, we will dive into the EU as a global actor with all it means in terms of international relations, but also our relationships with neighborhoods, for example. And lastly, we will open the floor as well to make sure that the youth perspective is represented, giving the opportunity and voice to any one of you to take the microphone and ask any questions that you may have. So for each block, we will start with a quick round of 1 minute and 30 seconds approximately. And after that, we hope to engage in a lot of discussion.
Yeah. All right. So we will briefly present our participants to this debate. Just on my right, we have Simina Tulbure, a representative of the Renew Europea party. She's a member of the Chamber of Deputies in the Romanian Parliament and vice president of the Renew European project in Romania. In the Romanian Parliament, she passed and she's working on legislation about education, inclusion, ethics, and seasonal workers. On my left, we have Júlia Miralles. She is responsible for international relations in Ancomu Sumar. She holds a PhD in political science by the Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona, and she's currently doing research on public policy analysis and administration reforms. And she also has a wide and extensive experience as a political advisor in the European Parliament. And on my right as well, we have Carlo Giacomo. Today he's coming on representation of Ana Collado, who could not make it at the very end. Ana Collado and Carlo Giacomo represent the EPP, and Carlo, concretely, she's the Secretary General of the Nuevas Generaciones of the Popular Party, and Ana is involved in the Constitutional Affairs Committee in the European Parliament. Shall we present Domènech? Yeah, sure. So Domènech Ruiz, the participant that we are still missing, he belongs to the Socialist Party, and he was elected in the 2019 European Parliament elections. And he's the coordinator of the S&D group in the Constitutional Affairs Committee. And he is also part of the Culture Committee. So we are very glad to have you all here, and we will now start with the first block that Paul mentioned, and we hope that Domènech can make it as soon as possible. So as we already announced in this first block of the debate, we wanted to assess the closing EU Parliament term, but also reflect on the priorities that may determine the upcoming EU Parliament on EU Commission term 2024-2029. We would like to put special emphasis into elements that Ursula von der Leyen Commissioner marked as crucial priorities for the last term. The first one is digital transition and the Europe fit for the digital age. And the second one is the green transition and the EU Green Deal. So the floor is yours.
Should we begin from the left, our left in this case?
Great, thank you. Thank you very much for organizing this debate and for inviting us. We are very happy to be here as Comun Sumar and, of course, as the European Greens with whom we have been working this term. So basically, just to go very quickly on these priorities of the Commission, but also on very relevant issues that have taken place during this term, I would say that, first of all, we have demonstrated with the COVID crisis that there was another option, like to face big crises like this one, that it's not austerity. No? I think this links also us to one of the big challenges we will have in the next term, that it's that avoid any return to austerity, that for some of the forces will be one priority. So basically, after the COVID, we have demonstrated that there's no need just to focus on deficit figures, on debt figures, but also on the need to do large investment plans from the EU. This is needed, for example, for the fair transition. We won't have a real fair ecological transition if we don't have large investment that will need also debt from countries, but especially debt at the EU level. So another thing very related to this one also on economics, we have got the 15% of company tax in all the EU. You know, this is just from the 1st January of this year. So this is also a step like behind that we should try to improve during this term, work more for fair taxing at all the EU level. And then finally, like if we have fair, a fair taxing system, and we have an European Union that does not bid for austerity, but for large investment plan, we can have also a stronger social European Union. I would say that this last term have not had very relevant advances on this issue, and this should be one of our priorities. Just as one of the final things I would like to comment on is, of course, this fair transition. I would say that we have had the European Green Deal passed in this term, and this is, of course, good news for us, but I would say also that we need more ambitious from the part of the European Union. We see now, for example, in the situation in the countryside, no? Let's say that the common food and agriculture policy have failed, and we should have, like, one of the priorities, like to combine a new agricultural model that promotes well-being of farmers and of people living from the agricultural activity, but also to have an agricultural model that is in line with our climate objective. This would be my first points.
Thank you. If you want to continue.
Thank you very much. Muchísimas gracias por recibirme aquí. Es un placer conocerles, es mi primera vez en Cataluña, so thank you very much for having me. So I'm Simina, I'm one of the youngest members of the Romanian Parliament. It's my first mandate. I was elected at 28 years old. I did my studies in the UK, and then when Brexit came, I was so disappointed with the Brits that I moved to Luxembourg. So I did my studies in the UK, and that's where I also worked for a few years, for a couple of years after I graduated. And then in Luxembourg, I worked for the European Parliament. I was a Schuman trainee, so probably my colleagues know what this means. So it's the Schuman traineeship is a traineeship for the young people in the European Parliament, and the Blue Book traineeship is in the European Commission. And there's a lot of other opportunities in the EU agencies. And then I worked for the European Investment Bank until 2020 December, when I was elected in the Romanian Parliament. So I'm a very European person, I would say, because thanks to the EU, I studied in the UK, and then I worked for the European institutions. So if anyone wants to talk to me about the EU institutions, I'll be more than welcome to give you some tips on how to get in. In what concerns the mandate that the European Commission had this year, it was a very, very difficult mandate, because let's not forget, we've had the COVID situation, and then we had the Russian war in Ukraine. So we had two existential crises. It was both a financial crisis, a health crisis, as well as the fact that most vulnerable people, they had to suffer, let's say, more than other people. So I think what Ursula von der Leyen and then the European Parliament as well, they've had to go through a lot of issues when it came to solving the existential crisis we've had in this mandate. So of course it wasn't perfect. Of course there's still so many things to be done. I very much appreciated, because we're talking about the youth, I appreciated the youth resolution, and through the MEP Dragoș Păslaru, who's my colleague in the European Parliament, I've included the Green Skills agenda in the youth resolution, because as our colleague earlier has mentioned, we need to have a better transition in what concerns our youth opportunities, employment opportunities, and I'm not entirely sure whether we're prepared for what comes next, because there's a lot of new era coming in with the artificial intelligence. There's the ChatGPT-4 coming over, and we need to know how to handle it. So that's why I've included the Green Skills agenda in it, and the fact that we need a reskilling agenda, especially in the European Union, because there's so many things to be done when it comes to youth opportunities. I think my time's up, right? Okay, so we'll have more chances to talk about this. Thank you.
Correct. Thank you. Now it's the turn of Mr. Giacomo, but we would like to welcome Domènech Ruiz with us finally from Brussels. Thank you for making it. We are speaking about the priorities of the Commission for the next term, so that will be the first 1 minute and 30 seconds that you will have afterwards. But please, Mr. Giacomo.
Carlo,
yeah.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the organization and congratulate you for organizing such an interesting debate here in my hometown in Barcelona. It's always a pleasure to come back home, especially for those of us that are now living abroad. And also your organization with such a tremendous history promoting the pro-European values and the Ventotene Manifesto. It's something that I think that perhaps it comes a bit unexpected for you, but this is a manifesto with which I share most of the ideas. So congratulations, and you have all our support from the youth of Partido Popular and the youth of the EPP also. Of course, coming back at your question, well, that is a complex question to answer in just 90 seconds. And as you can imagine, probably when the European Parliament was elected in 2019, no one expected what would develop later on during this mandate. First, a global pandemic, such as the COVID pandemic, and then war at the heart of Europe in Ukraine. So this is really something that wasn't in the schemes of anybody at the beginning of this mandate. So we moved from a mandate that with the coalition with the Greens for the first time in the history of the European politics had focused and put really the target on targeting this new European Green Deal and trying to achieve this green transition in the best possible way. But of course, new priorities came in later on. And I have to say that the European Union really wake up for the first time. It is true that many citizens have seen the European Union as a wishful thinker actor in the global scheme of things. And for the first time, the European Union really worked together, putting their common efforts, first to tackle the pandemic, and second to tackle the war. Of course, it is never enough, especially when it comes to the war in Ukraine. We can do more, we have to do more. Yes, today's vote, and Mr. Devesa can talk more about this, today's vote against discharging the European budget until the Patriot systems are in Ukraine is a good sign for the European Union. We are really coming in a maturity age of the EU. And this was all done under the von der Leyen Commission. So there is a big gap between what was announced in 2019 and what the balance can be done of what was announced in 2019. This is obvious. And just in 90 seconds, I'm not sure that we can point all the points. But these are probably the three main ideas. Green transition that started in 2019, but of course went a few steps down in the list of priorities, and tackling the pandemic emergency as a whole and not as 27, because also among the other things that happened during this term, we lost a member state, unfortunately. And then for the first time, the European Union providing attack weapons to a third country.
Please, Mr. Ruiz, I believe you need to share the microphone among both. So please, 90 seconds, couple of minutes about these priorities.
Well, first of all, thanks a lot for the invitation. I think what we will be looking for in this next mandate in the European Parliament, but in the institutions as a whole, is an even more social Europe. I think this has to be green, of course, but also very much social, because if we see what has happened since the financial crisis, the previous one I'm talking about, and the euro crisis, unfortunately, a radical change has happened in social psychology, I will say, which is that for the first time since the end of the Second World War, there is a feeling in society, a very negative feeling in society, which is to think that the future will not be necessarily better than the present. And this is terrible, and it hasn't changed. since the 2008-2012 period. Even though objectively you could say that things have improved on a number of indicators, certainly in terms of economy and job creation, even dealing with the pandemic, as the other person said, or colleague. We have overcome a number of crises during this mandate, quite effectively, I will say. But the question of increasing inequalities remains. This is something that started with the previous crisis and we haven't solved. And on the other hand, I will say they are increasing, these inequalities. So we have to fight this fear of the future, this idea that the future is not going to be better than the present, which never happened before. If you look at the 80s, the 90s, people, the early 2000s, people were looking ahead always to a better and brighter future. And we have lost that. And this is at the root, of course, of the, in my view, of the increase in support for far-right and Eurosceptic and Europhobic political forces. So we have done a lot in the social field, which in my view is the best antidote against these political tendencies. I think in Spain for sure, but not only in Spain, there is a demand, this idea, old idea, that Europe deals with the common market and deals with economic integration, with financial integration, and the member states do the welfare. It's kind of implicit, no, labor division, doesn't hold anymore. I think there is a strong demand among the population across Europe that there has to be a social role for the European Union. And this is not only rhetoric, because if you look at the mandate, thanks to the Socialists and Democrats, because we in order to elect the von der Leyen Commission, in 2019, we didn't give it away for free. And by the way, that was a big improvement, I will say, from a federalist point of view, because we are advancing in a real parliamentary democracy in Europe. Why do I say that? Because there was a coalition agreement in order to have the vote of the Socialists, to have the vote of the Liberals. The EPP and von der Leyen had to agree to points of our program. This is what happens also at the national level, no? When you are forming a government. And we said to von der Leyen, we will vote for you if you give us a directive on on minimum wages, which we got. So now it's mandatory in all member states to have minimum wages. I maybe pose the question also to the audience. Will you have imagined in 2010, at the height of the neoliberal cultural hegemony, with the Barroso I, Barroso II Commission, that one day Europe will tell member states, you have to have a minimum wage? But we achieved this in this mandate, thanks to the Socialists. We also achieved a directive on platform workers, so they are not considered anymore, as you know, self-employed, which is obviously not the case. And so on. We have developed the European Disability Card, which is valid for the entire Union, also under the Spanish presidency of the Council, which I think achieved a lot. So we need to project these ideas into the future, this strong social dimension, and of course to continue advancing on the green agenda. I disagree with the previous colleague, because I don't think we have to scale down the green agenda and put it in third or fourth place, because we have this revolt, so to speak, in the farmers sector, because in the end, even the farming sector will not have any future if we don't stop climate change. We can, of course, discuss the rhythm of the transition, and there we can surely find agreements. How to compensate,
Mr. Ruiz,
I'm closing, how to compensate the losers and so on, but that we have to stop climate change. I mean, this is something that we cannot do without.
Thank you so much for these first interventions. I don't know if someone wants to comment on someone else's words, otherwise. Yeah, we noticed that in all of your interventions, green transition was a really a real priority for all of you, but you were also concerned on the role of youth. and skills and the importance of ensuring a social transition and a fair transition for all of us as well. How do you think this could be brought forward in the next term, especially taking into account how the green and digital transition can affect youth and how to ensure that these transitions are really fair for young people in Europe?
So I've noted down some of the things that I'd love to do in the European Parliament, and so I have a very young team in the Romanian Parliament that's working with me, and we try to come up with some ideas way before I was running as a candidate for the European Parliament. So when it came to digital policy, we said we'd like to initiate a special grant for young talents in the digital industry as a facilitator for their innovation initiatives. And I think this is something the European Parliament can work even more with the youth. And anyway, I was very glad to see that in this mandate, the youth has had a special attention, let's say, but there's always so much more to be done. And we'd like to advance artificial intelligence skilling among young people by special trans-European educational initiatives. So we need to copy best practices from different member states. And when it comes, I did mention artificial intelligence earlier because my colleague Dragoș Tudorache, who was running the AI Act in the European Parliament, has worked on it very hard with the rest of members of the European Parliament. And this is something I'm really concerned with because it will shape our career opportunities, and that's why I think we need to involve the young people because they are more open to new initiatives, to innovation, and they have more initiatives, let's say, because they're more used to using the technology rather than the older generation. So that's why I think that the young people in Europe can definitely work more with the European Union because they are the ones who understand it better, let's say. And then I've also included a technological reform paradigm at the European level, having young people as primary agents. So all the reforms that are taking place at the moment, I think that we should definitely have a youth check policy because at least in Romania, we have more and more young people coming out, you know, that the millennials are basically more than the boomers at the moment in Romania. So we need to work with them. We need to work with the Gen Z as well and then the rest of the generation coming over. So when it comes to the digital policy, because you've asked about digitalization and everything that comes with it, I think the young people are the ones who should shape it more. Then, of course, we're taking on all the experts and the European Commission has a lot of experts, of course, but I think the young should be involved more and more.
I just slightly disagree with one of the things that have been said, and it's the fact that digitalization is not just about young people. I believe that digitalization is also a matter that creates social inequality and a big gap between generations. And it's something that us, as youngsters, should also take into consideration. It's true that we are naturally skilled to work and greatly skilled in everything that has to do with technology. I believe that my generation has no issue at all to adapt to technology in any sector, in any domain of their life, whether it's professional or private. But it is not the same when it comes to the elders in our countries. And this is also something that can be sensed in different regions of Europe differently. Exactly. So the generational gap and the digital gap is truly a big issue in many of the European countries, and I think that there is some room for the EU to work and to help our elders. And then, of course, there is a matter of new technologies that are reshaping our economy and our labor, where the European Union also plays a big role with the European globalization funds and other initiatives. They are trying to tackle this issue that there is, that our labor is not yet prepared for the new skills that are demanded by the labor market. So some of them are falling off the labor market, and this is something that we have to pay attention to. We don't want to deny technology. We don't want to avoid technology. This would be the bad approach. This wouldn't be an approach for growth and development, which our economy so desperately needs, because welfare is not just about the state giving to the people, but it's also about the economy creating jobs and creating wealth. So we have a variety of issues here, and it's true that we, as youngsters, will always be present in the debates about technology and digitalization, but please don't forget also about the other generations.
Yes, I would say that, in fact, I think we have a high risk with the green agenda, like of greenwashing, no? So maybe sometimes it looks like kind of a consensus on the idea that we should have policies for the green transition, but at the end, we should demonstrate this with specific policies. And we have been looking at this in the European Parliament in different occasions during the term, because, for example, it's true we have passed the European Green Deal, but then we see how with, for example, initiatives like the nature restoration regulations that the Popular Party have been trying to push to not getting an agreement for a long time. So at the end, it's true. We have a consensus that we used not to have some years ago, but we need also to be clearly more ambitious. Another example is the climate European regulations that were not enough on pushing we are pushing for 65% of reduction of the emissions for 2030, and then we arrive not just to a 55%. So this will be, of course, one of the challenges of the next term. I agree also on the idea that we need a transition that should be fair, that should we not leave anyone beside, but then we need also to have, for example, to tackle things like the transition in transport. So I would say, I was talking about taxation before, and I would say that we would need to tax, it has been a lot of debate on this in the last years, we would need to tax commercial flights and to push for a better train connections around Europe and also, of course, within the European member states. This could be also a way to create jobs. We consider that with a real job creating, green job creating transition, we could have around 2 million jobs created in the European Union in the next years. Another thing on the idea of the fair transition, that is the only green transition that would be possible, would be the renovations programs. One thing that is really like a problem for young people is housing, and I would say that we have a lot of old housing around Europe. With a large-scale renovation program, we could also work in job creation, in green transition, and in energy poverty, so this has also a social element. I have already talked about the agricultural policy that, of course, as Domènech said, I think should be one of the green priorities and green and social priorities of the next term.
Thank you. Well, I think that the question now was more about the challenges for the youth. And in that regard, I think we can do many more things there. First of all, we have to ban unpaid internships. This is an absolute must. No ifs, no buts. No unpaid internships. We have approved the directive on the matter, but it is not sufficiently binding. So now it's a task of the member states, and unfortunately, the Commission, at least they say, they have not been able to find a legal base to impose this obligation on member states. So now it's the member states to follow the recommendation or the Commission or not. But certainly this is something that we have to do in the next mandate. No more internship, unpaid internships. Second, we can invest much more and expand much more the youth guarantee. The Youth Guarantee is an excellent program from the European Union, as you know, which aims that all those below 25, I think, or 24, must have either a job, an apprenticeship, a traineeship, or a scholarship. So that means we don't have ninis, as we say in Spanish. So below 24, 25, you are either training at work, you are either studying, right? Or you are either working. So one of these three things must happen. Of course, if we want to have a systemic effect, and for this to really have an impact, we need to have more funding. So this is the question of budget for the next term as well. But we can invest much more in the youth guarantee. And then I think both, what's your name? Carlo and Júlia were right on the question of jobs and housing, because those are challenges for the youth, obviously. I think we need, for the next term, a directive on full employment, because full employment has gone a bit back, no? It's been forgotten, no? We don't talk about full employment anymore, no? I mean, there was a time, no? Right, Meritxell? We always say, we want to have full employment, no? Particularly from a social democratic perspective. So I think this should be a core objective of the Union. We want to achieve full employment, and that includes, of course, increasing youth employment rates as part of this full employment directive. And the other challenge that Júlia mentioned is housing, and the youth also suffer, particularly the lack of housing. And there, this is a field in which the European Union so far has been not active, or very little active. And we need to develop also, I think, a European housing policy, because this is a challenge common to the majority of member states. And it is not only a national competency, because you know that housing is very much linked also to the functioning of capital markets, and this is a common issue in Europe. And also when we heard of the vulture funds buying apartments, I mean, this is a transnational issue also. So we need, I think, new action from the European Union in the housing sector.
Thank you. So unless we have any quick reactions about that, we would suggest that we move on to the second block already, which, while the public is still thinking about their questions coming in only a few minutes, which is the EU as a global actor. So the geopolitical turn of this term of the European Union is undeniable. We have all seen how the several conflicts that we are living in Europe, particularly the war in Gaza and the war in Ukraine, are marking the political agenda. And this has also marked a new era, probably, for the Union as a whole, posing a lot of questions about its future and about geopolitical issues, of course, and also having an impact directly on European people's pockets, minds, and hearts, even seeing the hard images to swallow that we are seeing currently. But other topics are also relevant, such as the strategic autonomy, such as the relationships with the United States and China, such as other issues of the conversation that's going on in Brussels, and also enlargement, and enlargement in particular towards the East. With all of those questions in mind, we would like to know your position about. But firstly, since we are speaking about neighborhood, and since we are speaking about matters that have to do with international relations, it is also relevant to mention yesterday's agreement on the Migration and Asylum Pact, right? Which was passed with the votes of some of the parties by candidates represented here. And I would like to start with a quick round of positionings about such. Maybe you could share with us your positioning, because this has been also a sort of controversy and backlash in the last hours, since there is also some contestation about activist groups concerned about human rights, while at the same time others arguing that this can be a nice opportunity to build a solid foundation for a system in asylum in Europe that actually works, one that is not overlooked by the states, which in some cases, by the way, are already trying to find ways to skip the system. So I don't know if we maybe should start from this side in this occasion. Whoever would like to take the floor. Thank you.
So many topics, no?
Yes.
How much time do we have for this block?
Let's begin for migration, maybe, and
we start with migration.
If that's fine, with a quick round on positions about that, and then we dive
okay,
into
so now it's only migration. Well, I think I know there is a polemic about this topic. I know it's not perfect. And by the way, we have to say that in politics, nothing is perfect unless you have all the votes, and then maybe you achieve your perfect goal, but the rest of society is not going to be very happy, no? But in the European Parliament, we need to build majorities that are also, in the majority of the cases, up until now at least, they are left-right majorities, no? So you don't have a majority that is only on the left or on the right normally. And in this case, we needed to find a compromise that is not satisfactory to everyone, as it is always with compromises. But I think on the whole is a step forward. It's a step forward because, first of all, this is the first time we really have a real common asylum and migration policy at the European level in reality. Why? Because the most important achievement of this pact, and we can also discuss the negatives, but the most important achievement is that we have now a principle which is in the law of mandatory solidarity. Up until now, and this is something, by the way, that concerns particularly countries like ours, like Spain, but also Italy, Greece, or Malta, that up until now, it's the member states that are at the southern border of the Union that have to shoulder the entire responsibility of dealing with the arrivals of the irregular arrivals of migrants, right? So up until now, if now we have a sudden influx of 50,000 people arriving in any of these countries, France, Germany, Poland, Hungary have no obligation whatsoever to provide any help in dealing with these arrivals, helping finding places to settle them, to provide food and medicines. They have no obligation whatsoever. What we have agreed is that now this is a common responsibility, right? This is a big step forward, a common responsibility. So now these arrivals have to be distributed across the Union, and those that are not willing to participate, they have to contribute financing to a common fund, to provide for this. So I think this is a big step forward. Now, of course, there are questions that regard the procedures at the border, in which it is true we could have provided better guarantees for family reunification, for children, and so on. This is the main criticism, the procedure at the borders, how you deal with these situations. And it's true, we didn't get as much as we wanted in this front, but one thing it's important, we are not, in this domain, we are not worse than now. So we are not improving the situation of families and children at the border. And we wish we could do more in the future. But for now, we have achieved, I think, this principle of mandatory solidarity, which is central. And this is why I voted in favor of the pact, knowing that it's not perfect. And of course, I want to achieve more in the future. But this is a very important first step.
Thank you, Mrs. Miralles. What's your position on the matter?
Yes, I would say that, in fact, the migration issue, I think, would be crucial in the next years. And it reminds me to one of the biggest risks we have in this election, that is the possibility of having, after the election, for the first time, of course, a big majority between the conservative parties and the far right. I would say that the recent discourses on migration we see are quite full, in general, of racism and xenophobia. And I would say that, in fact, in some sense, this discourse, these ideas that the far right is trying to push for are arriving to a lot of different political forces, and this is really a danger we are seeing today. Specifically in relation to the pact, I would say that it has enormous problems. So we still treat migration as a security issue and not as a social and human rights issue that I would say is the central question, but also I would say that from an economic point of view, we all know that we need young people and we need migrants to maintain the welfare state we have in Europe, that it's in high risk. We have, for example, need to push more for social Europe because we are like behind what we would like to be. Specifically on the pact, I would say that the border controls it established and the regulations on the borders are against the rights of refugees, the international rights of refugees. And so I would say that, of course, we are with the like all the social movements that have been demonstrating their contrary opinions to this pact.
Simina.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, to me, and this is my personal opinion, I think the migration vote from yesterday was a reaction to the far-right parties that have used migration against the European Union. We've seen it in Europe, and we've seen it in all countries, including mine. This is the propaganda they use against the European Union. And then, of course, the European Union has had to come up with something in response to it, because there's an electoral year, there's European Parliament elections, there's presidential elections everywhere, including my country, as well as parliamentary elections and local elections. Now, of course, the migration policies are, I wouldn't say number one, but clearly top three issues that the far-right parties are using against the EU, and including in my own country. Now, what I think is that we need to be very careful on the human rights perspective, first of all, and secondly, on the fact that there's a war in Europe at the moment. So Romania holds a lot of Ukrainian refugees at the moment, and imposing this would complicate things so much, and I think it'd be the same in Poland. So I think we should be really careful when we impose a few things to pay attention to the fact that there's still many Ukrainian refugees coming in Europe, but especially in our region. I live at the border with Ukraine, and I know exactly how hard it is for Ukrainians to come to Europe and to get fully integrated, and possibly, you know, having such harsh like checks and you know, imposing these things in countries like Romania or Poland would be very difficult for us, and I'd be very ashamed, you know, identifying and checking on the Ukrainian refugees. I would not do this, for example. But I totally understand the fact that the European Union has had to come up with something on the migration policies. There's so many things to be done. I would not open the Schengen discussion because Romania has had a very difficult part in it, and we've recently joined air and sea Schengen, and we haven't joined the terrestrial Schengen because of the migration, because they said there's many migrants coming, well, Austria said especially, that there's many migrants coming to Romania, which is not true. We're actually looking for migrants because the Romanians live abroad, and I represent Romanians abroad. That's my constituency, and we have a shortage in job opportunities because Romanians are not in Romania, so we need a lot of labor. But anyway, this is a very large discussion, and I'll be more than glad to have just one debate on migration, because sometimes, and especially in the European Union, we don't always take into account what the countries from the Central and Eastern Europe have to say. And Romania is definitely a very special case, and I'd be more than glad to give more details. And I'd like to make a mention. What I'm saying at the moment is not the government's position, because now I'm in opposition back home, so I can say whatever I want to. But I really wanted to give you my personal opinion, because I'm running for the European Parliament, and it's important to see what the candidates have to say when they're running for this position.
Thank you, thank you. Well, I get the sense that we're coming a bit to a more hotter topic than we had before. Just a few remarks, not to make this too awkward to the audience. And look, migration is certainly a matter of human rights. I couldn't say otherwise. I'm a migrant myself. But it can also become a topic of safety and security. And we cannot lie to our citizens. There have been huge issues with security related to migration. And as difficult as this is to acknowledge, I think that if we don't do it right now, then of course political parties that you don't like will probably take over, because this is the issue. When we don't tell the truth to the citizens, somebody else will. We are in the digital age, and everything gets out in the social media. So it's important to be honest with each other, to be honest with our citizens. It's a big step forward to have finally a European regulation that will apply immediately and that is binding for all member states. This is a huge step forward because, of course, we have seen what it does not to have this for the last decade or decade and a half already. So this was yesterday a huge victory, especially seeing that some big majorities were made in the European Parliament, when before that, some minutes before the vote, it wasn't that clear that a majority was there to support the pact. So let's try to be more open-minded and more honest with our citizens. Let's try to put everything in front of them. And also, I just want to say that personally, I don't like when we talk about migration and say that we need the labor. Migration is not just about the economic needs of a country. So if we had full employment, we would close the doors and shut down the doors to migrants. I'm not sure that this is the best approach for migration. I believe that having big diasporas like we have in Barcelona is enriching the country, and it goes beyond that. So if we have an issue with our own demographic data, perhaps we have to build on a package of, I don't know, whether it is investments or regulations that will help overcome this demographic issue that we truly have, and here in Spain with the second worst natality rates in Europe, well, we were very well aware of.
Of course. Because, you know, I mentioned before that I'm in support of the pact precisely because of the most important element is the principle of mandatory solidarity. But I disagree with this position, this general view on migration, no? And I'm closer to what Júlia said before. I don't think we should at all see migration as a threat or as a security issue, rather as an opportunity. I think one of the faults, even I will say, on the left in the past years, is to try to avoid the migration topic. No? The far right manipulates it. It's too difficult to talk about it. Let's get into the defensive, maybe, but not really. No. Yeah. I didn't mean to quote you, no? But I think we have to be courageous, even in electoral times, and to develop a positive narrative about migration. I will go more into this line, really, because first of all, it's something that has happened in history. I mean, it's a human phenomenon, natural phenomenon. People look for better opportunities. People are escaping from wars, from human rights violations. Of course, we don't want to, at the same time, encourage, how do you say it in English, like when the brains move away? Fuga de cerebros, I don't know how to say this in English. Brain drain, thank you, brain drain, no? Because, of course, in developing countries, they need engineers, they need physicians as well, and so on. But we need to find the right balance, because we also need people in Europe. If we want to preserve the rural world in Europe and to fight depopulation, we also need to welcome more people. No? And there are jobs in Europe that have no people willing to do them. So we have. It's interesting that you have the right sometimes, copying the far right a bit on the migration topic, but then you see the entrepreneurs, associations, demanding governments. We have seen this in Italy, right? Asking the entrepreneurs in Italy, asking the government, we need 200,000 more workers in different sectors of the economy. So I think we have to really be realistic about this question and develop a positive narrative. And by the way, I think never, never, never copy the far right. I don't advise that, either in migration, either in environment, because people are always going to select the original vis-a-vis the copy. And something that I regret is that in this last part of the mandate in Europe, the EPP has moved too much to the right on these two topics because of the fear of the increase of support for the far right. This is a strategy I will not recommend.
Thank you so much. It's a pity we cannot continue discussing on this for long and long and long. Okay, so we came to the end of this second block, and the third and very short block, it's questions open to the public. So there is a micro somewhere. Okay. I'm not sure we will have time to answer them all.
So thank you so much for what you've said, what you've shared today. So I've seen that we're talking a lot about future opportunities for youth, and we've been talking about unpaid internship, for example, and I think this is a very important topic for all of us. So I wanted to share with you not only our concern as youth for unpaid internship, but also for working conditions for us, entry opportunities, kind of breaking the ceiling not only for young women, but also for young youth who are always more educated and have, well, increasingly less good privileges in the workplace. So that was kind of my question.
Yeah, we will collect a couple of question more.
Thank you. Well, I think especially with coming elections in June, it's important to also, I would like to know the perspective of the representatives of each parliament, of each political party here, regarding how easy for external countries, so namely Russia, to influence elections, and it's so for them to, through namely artificial intelligence, and recently this month, the Artificial Intelligence Act was approved. However, how can the EU address the menace that Russia poses, China poses to our democracy? Because we are seeing that increasingly we have more at the global scene, we're facing more threats to our democracy. Thank you.
We will collect one more.
Okay,
Yeah,
I can go on?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So the question is about next generation funds. So I myself like deputy mayor in my town hall, okay? So one of the big opportunities that we have in our town hall is to get these funds to invest in certain things that are happening. So for everybody to understand, these people decide, to create these funds, which is a great thing, and we are the ones who are getting them, okay? But one of the problems that we have when we're executing them is that we have very tight timetables, okay? And I do think that one of the important things when you're talking about the European Union is that everybody see how effective it can be. So as I said, we have very tight timetables. And for instance, we got like funding for 1.5 million to reform something, okay? But the thing is that if we don't do it in this timetable, which we can get an extension, then it has to be paid by us, which is like, it has huge consequences in our budget because we have 15 million budget, but most of it is for, workers and stuff. So my question is, how we can solve that? Because it's obvious that a next generation funds is a good way, to make the EU better, at least in comparison to 2010. But if this doesn't work, the conception of people, it's not positive in the end. So, yeah, we should make changes in that direction. Thank you.
All right, thank you for those questions. Regrettably, due to time constraints, we will have to answer them all bundled and together. So whoever wants to take the microphone first can go over them quickly. Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, very good question. Sorry, I don't remember your names. And I particularly wanted to address the youth job opportunities. And since I represent Romanians abroad, I had a lot of contact with young Romanians or students, for example. And one thing that they told me they're really afraid of is not being able to pay the rent and the bills, and to have a normal salary to live in any European country, and especially capitals, because that's where the universities are normally. And having met the students in the Netherlands, for example, I'm not sure if anyone is from the Netherlands here, but there's a very youth housing crisis there, because the students live on the streets basically before they find housing, and of course there's also an effect from Brexit, because we can't go to study in the UK anymore. So what I said, I'd like to create a European facility for youth housing, investing in subsidizing and creating an amplified number of social housing units for young people in both rural and urban areas, especially in the so-called university cities. And I think this is something that would definitely help the youth. Now, of course, we can talk about bursaries and scholarships and all that, but I think that the youth housing is a massive problem that we should definitely address, and this would help out the students as well as with the unpaid internships that shouldn't take place anymore. On the question on the Russian influence and me coming from Romania, now we don't speak Russian. Romanian is a Latin language, so of course we were one of the lucky ones. But like, if I think about Republic of Moldova, for example, they also speak Romanian, but they also speak Russian because of Russia. And then the Western Balkans, as well as the Central Eastern European countries, we've had a lot of Kremlin propaganda in the last 3 years, and especially with the pandemic situation, there was a lot of anti-vaxxers as well. They were from the same region, let's say. A lot of Kremlin propaganda, such as, why should we give money to the Ukrainian children when there are so many Romanian children who live in poverty? And now the far-right political party, they use this a lot, and because of it, now they have 15% in the polls. So the Kremlin propaganda not only works online, and they use TikTok a lot for it, and because you mentioned China, now TikTok as well has to be in a way or another regulated, because it does have a lot of influence. Now, of course, there's a fine line between the freedom of speech and what can be regulated. And this is something which is very sensitive for the politicians. And I personally tried to see how I can work on the national legislation in Romania, but it's very hard to regulate it. With the Kremlin propaganda, we tried as much as possible to talk about the benefits of the European Union, the benefits of NATO, and including, because we talked about migration, I think it's very good that we addressed the issue, because this is something that the far-right political parties are using. So I'm working on this back home in Romania, but it's very hard, and I think the European Union and the US and the world should address it better, because we are in danger of the Kremlin propaganda.
Thank you, Mrs. Tulbure. I don't know if any one of you would like to do one lightning fast answer to some of the other questions.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, so
I'm going to be super quick, okay?
Thank you.
So first, on job opportunities, there's clearly a burden that is too big for our companies, especially the SMEs, with taxation. There is an issue with taxation which prevents new job opportunities to come on the market. Many people would like to invest, but they simply cannot afford paying the state everything that they have to. Second, about the influence of foreign powers on our elections. Of course, we are trying to do everything that is possible to prevent the propaganda to enter our public media and debates. But there is something. We have social cleavages that are real, and that very smart people in foreign countries that are trying to do very bad things know how to use against us. So if we create if we advance our economy, if we advance the situation of our citizens, if we avoid ourselves trying to misguide our citizens, perhaps we'll have a better chance at defeating disinformation. And then finally, about the next generation, I don't know exactly the issues with timetable, but I really think that also this is taxpayers' money, and I don't know if there is something that can be done, but I think that generally the projects are quite realistic, and but I'm sure that you are a great deputy mayor and that you will manage not to have this big hole in your budget.
Thank you. One last 30 seconds.
Yes, 30 seconds. I just would like to say that in relation to the foreign influence in the elections, basically I think that this links to the need of Europe to have a strategic autonomy in foreign policy and security policy, and this should be a policy that is in favor of the international law, of human rights and of democracy. So of course one of the issues would also be protect our democracy with cybersecurity measures, and in relation to the next generation, it makes come to my mind that we need also to make municipalities more present at the EU level. This would mean more powers for the Committee of the Region and local representatives. And then also, for example, to have in the case of the next generation, we didn't get it, but we were asking for direct access of the municipalities to the funds. Of course, this is not the only measure. For example, we would need also to understand better with the reality of these municipalities and to adapt to their realities and needs.
On that, I want to take the opportunity because I was the one promoting in the European Parliament, and the European Commission supported me. And maybe you don't know about this network, and I encourage you to join it, which is Building Europe with Local Councillors. Do you know it? Yeah? So this is open to all the municipalities in Europe, and it's precisely a network that wants to, because you talk about the council, the Committee of the Regions, which is, of course, we like it, we support, but this one, with this one, the municipality, Belk, you can put it in the navigator, puts the municipality in a direct association agreement with the European Commission. So it's a great source of information, of support for the matters that you were talking about. Also, they run a survey to understand at the local level what are the needs and the preoccupations. We, in our country, we are the second or third with most municipalities that have joined the network. So, yeah, it's a bit of advertisement, but I think you will like it.
Yeah. Thanks so much for these quick answers. And again, we're very sorry we cannot continue discussing because there is something else going on right after. As we announced at the very beginning, it's a great honor for us to have our Foreign Affairs Minister from Catalonia in here, Meritxell Serret, who will close the debate. Thank you so much. Oh. Sorry. And again, as we said at the beginning, thanks so much to all of you to participating and engaging in such an insightful debate.
Ara a veure quan em cau tot. No, molt bé. Molt bona tarda, president, amigues, amics, sobretot als ponents aquí, eurodiputats, eurodiputades i demés representants i sobretot a tots els amics d'aquestes joventuts europees federalistes. First of all, I will speak a little bit in English and then I will turn back to the Catalan. I'm very honored today to be here with you in this event. Thank you to the JEF Catalunya and also to the University Pompeu Fabra and also the Barcelona Center of European Studies, and without any doubt, thank you for this magnificent place, the Ateneu Barcelonès, which are all of them leading institutions in promoting here in Catalonia culture and also politics and democratic values. And thank you, most of all, thank you for the debate today here, because we need to reinforce what you have been talking about, this link between youth and Europe, and these values, and this commitment with the European project. Canvio. El nostre present i futur com a societat parlo de Catalunya, però crec que podem parlar perquè ens considerem europeus, també d'aquest futur i present d'Europa passa necessàriament pel projecte europeu, pel projecte d'aquesta Unió Europea, d'integració, de cohesió, de buscar aquesta igualtat entre igualtat d'oportunitats, igualtat social, econòmica dels ciutadans d'arreu d'Europa. I per nosaltres, i és una bandera que sempre portem i la falco, és també aquest segon entorn que tenim a la vora, que és el Mediterrani. Per Catalunya, Europa és el nostre marc de referència de desenvolupament, però el Mediterrani també és el nostre entorn natural de desenvolupament. I permeteu-me aprofitar també avui aquí, reivindicar el missatge de que el futur de la Unió Europea i el futur del Mediterrani van de la mà. I que aquesta visió de prosperitat compartida, de cooperació, l'hem d'estendre també en tot el marc mediterrani i que necessitem aprofundir més i reforçar aquesta visió estratègica europea envers el Mediterrani i aquí, a la nostra contribució d'una sèrie de governs, Catalunya, però a la bona part dels governs de les ribes mediterrànies estem impulsant la macroregió mediterrània per precisament contribuir amb aquesta idea de que necessitem més polítiques euromediterrànies, perquè forma part també d'aquests grans debats europeus que avui heu estat apuntant en bona mesura i que hem parlat el gran repte i que a la Mediterrània en tenim, el palpem cada dia, el canvi climàtic, sense cap mena de dubte, la transició demogràfica en la seva doble vessant, envelliment per una banda i de l'altra la diversitat creixent de la nostra societat gràcies a les poblacions, a les persones nouvingudes d'arreu del món i que, com bé recordàvem, aquí, per exemple a Catalunya, en som un clar exemple. Hem crescut exponencialment i proporcionalment d'una manera accelerada els darrers anys. Som ja 8 milions d'habitants a Catalunya gràcies, en bona part, a aquestes persones que han vingut d'arreu a contribuir a fer país i a fer també Europa. Per tant, un altre gran repte que va lligat és ocupació, ocupació juvenil, però plena ocupació, totalment d'acord. Habitatge, migració, però hi torno, i estic d'acord, com una oportunitat. I des d'aquí permeteu-me llançar un missatge des del nostre punt de vista potser més crític amb el pacte que s'ha aprovat en el Parlament Europeu, en tant que creiem que la narrativa és important i la migració no es pot considerar un cost, sinó que ha de ser una oportunitat. I per tant ha de ser també entesa tot aquest tractat d'asil i de migració com un exercici per afavorir també la integració, aquest projecte federal. I per tant aquí creiem que hi ha segurament molt marge de millora. Educació, vosaltres sobretot representeu aquests reptes també i porteu la bandera d'aquests reptes que tenim a nivell d'educació i sí també debats importants en termes de seguretat, i ara en parlaré una mica més, però el tenim amb la doble vessant, la seguretat geopolítica, en podem parlar, però també de seguretat interna. I aquí també, enllaçant-ho amb aquests reptes que dèiem abans, la seguretat amb una narrativa que ens porti a entendre que la seguretat de veritat ve de la igualtat de les persones, dels drets de les persones ben reconeguts. I per tant, que siguem conscients que quan parlem a vegades de criminalitat el que estem parlant sobretot és que tenim desigualtats i bosses de pobresa. I per tant, a partir de que som capaços d'afrontar, donar drets, donar igualtat d'oportunitats, som capaços també de garantir seguretat a la nostra societat. I evidentment, un dels grans reptes que té la nostra societat catalana, europea, és aquest auge de discursos populistes d'extrema dreta. Però la Unió Europea, el futur de la Unió Europea, a part de tots aquests àmbits sectorials, per dir-ho així, té també més reptes per davant. Estem en un moment de la Unió Europea, que és un moment de grans transicions, de grans interrogants i per tant de grans incerteses, i precisament un dels reptes per la Unió Europea és com som cada vegada més capaços d'adaptar-nos a aquests escenaris d'incertesa i d'inestabilitat. El canvi climàtic és el primer que ens genera incerteses, inestabilitats, inseguretats. També la geopolítica, els conflictes, les guerres, aquests auges d'extrema dreta, de governs autoritaris, crisis sobrevingudes, les hem patit, financeres, però també la de la Covid, sense anar gaire enllà. Però, a més, Europa també hem d'afrontar i hem d'estar debatent aquests dies i en els propers mesos i anys reptes propis i que venen de lluny alguns. Aquestes reformes internes que fa temps que es plantegen, que han d'implicar canvis en la governança, en els tractats, en el sistema de presa de decisions, en el Consell, també per part del Parlament i la iniciativa legislativa, el repte de l'ampliació, urgent i accelerat ara en països propers i amenaçats i ara mateix agredits durament per Rússia, però que també tenim aquella ampliació letàrgica gairebé dels Balcans i necessària també, el gran debat que tenim també econòmic del pressupost de la Unió Europea i per tant si reforcem aquesta federació europea amb més compromís de tots els estats i a més també tenim un repte a nivell d'Unió Europea i que avui també forma part de l'objectiu d'aquests debats, que és com reforcem la legitimitat i la proximitat del projecte europeu amb la ciutadania. I per tant, com reforcem allò que aquests anys ha sigut motor d'integració, que són les polítiques de cohesió, que són també l'evolució cap a aquesta governança multinivell amb més proximitat als governs locals i regionals, perquè som els que implementem bona part de les polítiques europees i dels fons europeus i com fem que aquesta subsidiarietat sigui de pujada, donant a la Unió Europea aquesta capacitat de dictar o de decidir grans polítiques, però alhora també donant veu als que implementem per com millorem i com adaptem aquestes polítiques realment a les necessitats per tenir l'impacte que la nostra ciutadania demana i mereix. Per tant, són molts debats que s'entrelliguen i que són interdependents i que els hem de fer i hem de ser capaços de fer-los tots alhora en els propers setmanes, mesos i anys, perquè, com dic, ens hi juguem molt. Per Catalunya, la nostra societat, és tradicionalment i tenim una vocació europeista des dels orígens. Aquest dia celebràvem els 75 anys del moviment europeu, aquí el Consell Català del Moviment Europeu. Des dels orígens vam tenir catalans i catalanes apostant fermament pel projecte europeista. I el govern de la Generalitat ens creiem i ens fem nostra aquesta vocació de la nostra societat i, per tant, mirem de recuperar i de mantenir aquesta interlocució al màxim nivell i d'influir en la mesura que podem també i amb els espais que hi han creats i construint-ne, si cal, de nous, amb xarxes i amb plataformes, amb diferents socis, per contribuir a aquestes polítiques i aquests debats que necessitem i que ens volem fer nostres, perquè si no la distància entre el projecte i la societat anirà augmentant i el que necessitem és, al contrari, acostar. Per tant, cal que tinguem aquesta capacitat. Perquè un dels reptes que tenim de cara a les eleccions del proper, seran entre el 6 i el 9, aquí el 9 de juny, és sobretot la participació. Tenim una història i tradicionalment són de les eleccions en què la participació ha estat baixa. I necessitem, per tots els motius que dèiem abans de tots aquests reptes, mobilitzar més que mai el vot en aquestes eleccions. Perquè, i avui ho hem vist també en aquest debat i en com al final en el Parlament Europeu, en les institucions europees, hi ha també aquesta capacitat de, els blocs ideològics, incidir en les polítiques. Per tant, votar importa. Votar impacta en aquestes polítiques que després condicionen el nostre dia a dia, cada dia més en tots els àmbits. I per tant, qui votem al Parlament Europeu ens importa, ens ha d'importar perquè ens impacta. I per tant, aquesta és també una de les raons per les quals hem de motivar i mobilitzar al màxim en els propers dies a tothom perquè participi activament en aquestes eleccions. I a més fent-ho amb el que fem avui, amb aquesta rigorositat, amb aquest sentit de responsabilitat, aquesta consciència, per tant, amb un debat constructiu, serè, crític quan calgui, perquè hem de poder ser crítics, perquè és el nostre projecte també, i hem de voler millorar-lo sempre, però és necessari fer aquest exercici, insisteixo, crític quan calgui, però amb tota la vocació d'incidir-hi. I tenim molt clar que per reforçar aquest projecte europeu hem de tenir aquestes actituds de compromís i, si em permeteu, una línia vermella molt clara, que és de contribuir sempre i ser lleial i fer aquest exercici de participar al projecte europeu de manera lleial als principis i valors fundacionals de la Unió Europea. Els principis de la dignitat humana, de la llibertat, de la democràcia, del foment de la pau, de l'estat de dret i dels drets humans. Perquè avui són més necessaris que mai, vist tot aquest context que dèiem d'amenaces, de reptes, i vist també no només les guerres que tenim a les portes d'Europa, de fet a Europa, a Ucraïna, també Gaza, Palestina, també n'hi ha a l'Àfrica i també ens han de preocupar, l'auge de l'extrema dreta, com dèiem, i sobretot, permeteu-me que necessitem una Europa forta. I la fortalesa d'Europa ve també de com es fa més federal, amb aquests grans debats que dèiem, però també com és coherent. Perquè la fortalesa, per tenir fortalesa cara enfora hem de ser forts cara endins. Per tant, o falquem aquesta coherència, aquesta implicació i aquesta legitimitat amb la nostra ciutadania o difícilment serem prou forts per fer-nos valdre en aquest escenari global cada cop més complex. I perquè a través d'aquesta Europa forta també hem de contribuir, permeteu-me fer la falca, a l'altre espai multilateral per nosaltres també estratègic, que és el sistema de Nacions Unides. I que també necessitem una Europa forta que reforci aquest sistema de Nacions Unides que ens hem dotat de dret internacional, de dret humanitari i de drets humans. Per tant, ens cal una Europa forta, una Europa coherent, i en aquesta visió per la Unió Europea, permeteu-me fer una mica quina és la nostra falca, quina és la nostra visió de com ha d'evolucionar aquesta Unió Europea. Una Unió Europea que ens porti més integració, com deia, aquest motor de reforç del projecte ve de la mà i ha sigut el motor d'aquesta integració, les polítiques de cohesió. Hi haurà molts debats, debats pressupostaris, debats de prioritats en polítiques. La seguretat realment és important i no ho podem obviar, però no podem deixar de banda altres polítiques, que dèiem, uns valors, uns drets, però també la política de cohesió. Aquesta governança multinivell, aquesta proximitat, aquest arrelament del projecte en les administracions més properes a la ciutadania i també allò que per nosaltres, Catalunya, per com estem situats geogràficament, és importantíssim, que és la cooperació transfronterera, perquè ha sigut també un motor d'integració esborrant barreres administratives i fent encara més mercat intern i acostant, insisteixo, més a la població a les polítiques. Volem, com deia, també una Europa més mediterrània i, sobretot, aquesta capacitat de fer aquelles transformacions verda, social, feminista, democràtica que el projecte necessita. Però, sobretot, també volem, a part de totes aquestes polítiques que hem anat dient, estic d'acord, aquestes autonomies estratègiques, aquestes sobiranies que ens reivindiquem, tecnològica, i que tenen a veure amb aquest complex reequilibri global, per tant, tecnològica, també ambiental. Hem de ser capaços d'avançar també en aquesta resiliència ambiental i també té molt de tecnològic, permeteu-me allò, avui aquí estem a Catalunya amb una sequera, hem de construir desalinitzadores i per alguns dels components principals només hi ha 1 o 2 productors al món i no n'hi ha cap a Europa, per exemple. Per tant, en molts aspectes hem d'avançar en aquestes sobiranies, en aquest pilar social, en aquesta sobirania també alimentària i d'agenda rural, però sobretot, i estic d'acord amb el que ha sortit avui aquí, els joves. El paper dels joves i com els joves sou un actor rellevant en les polítiques europees. I com aconseguim aquesta implicació? Perquè, torno, en les estadístiques que hi ha hagut darrerament, també se'ns diu que un percentatge elevat dels joves d'entre 18 i 24 o 25 anys no se senten europeus, se senten distanciats de les institucions europees. I aquest és un gran repte que tenim. I per tant necessitem avançar en com acostem. Aquests dies he tingut també la sort, i és una iniciativa que fem conjuntament amb l'Oficina del Parlament Europeu, d'impulsar i participar en un dels tallers. Fem uns tallers en 16 instituts i escoles de Catalunya amb un programa que es diu Learn to Check, que és com acompanyem els joves a tenir més capacitats i competències davant l'amenaça de la desinformació a les xarxes socials, a aquells espais en els que ha proliferat, i en parlàvem abans, aquests discursos que volen generar trencament de convivència, odi i demés. I que ens estan fent mal també per construir la identitat europea. I en una de les sessions amb joves, eren de tercer o quart de batxillerat, d'ESO, se'm va acudir demanar si se sentien europeus. I una noia em va respondre que no, perquè no es podia sentir europea quan la feien sentir que no pertanyia aquí, que potser era una criminal, que se n'hauria de tornar al seu país. Per tant, combatre aquests discursos és necessari per la nostra cohesió i per construir també aquest sentiment i aquest projecte europeu. Apostes que fem també des del govern, i aquí espero guanyar algun punt, per exemple, amb les beques Canigó, unes pràctiques en organitzacions internacionals remunerades, que hem augmentat el pressupost per poder promoure aquest acostament a aquests organismes internacionals dels nostres joves, i també tenim les beques del Diplocat, també remunerades, per cursar estudis internacionals. Per tant, són petits exemples, però estic d'acord que hem de fer molt més, perquè si no, no serem útils al propi projecte europeu, si no som capaços que la veu dels joves, la perspectiva dels joves, estigui molt més considerada en totes les polítiques. Per anar acabant, perquè em sap greu que m'he allargat molt, però com que heu anat dient moltes coses, no et afegir moltes coses al discurs previst. Hi ha un element, evidentment, que permeteu que el deixi també anar avui aquí, que és aquesta aposta també d'acostar la societat catalana a Europa. Per nosaltres passa també perquè el català sigui finalment una llengua oficial a les institucions europees. No és només una demanda històrica des del 1987, sinó que a més és, creiem, un dret d'aquests 10 milions de catalanoparlants, té l'estatus oficial prou específic aquí en el marc de l'estat espanyol com per meritar aquest reconeixement oficial, i a més és una llengua perfectament preparada per assumir el repte que suposa ser oficial a les institucions europees. Per acabar, agrair moltíssim l'acte d'avui, agrair poder ser aquí, per descomptat, i deixeu-me llançar només, reiterar, en què ens cal, evidentment, més democràcia, ens cal més compromís, per tant, hem d'animar al màxim a la participació a les properes eleccions europees, perquè necessitem una Europa que continuï sent garant a dins Europa, amb la coherència interna i, per tant, també a nivell global, garant dels drets i de les llibertats, d'aquests principis democràtics. Europa és el nostre present i volem que continuï sent el nostre futur, un futur, com deia abans, més just, més verd, més pròsper, però sobretot compromès sempre amb els valors fundacionals del projecte de la Unió Europea. Moltes gràcies als ponents, enhorabona pel debat, molt ric i divers, i sobretot gràcies a tothom per aquest, espero, compromís compartit i només demanar-vos això, insistir, i no me'n cansaré, que fem tots campanya en els propers dies perquè hi hagi molta participació amb un vot compromès i conscient de cara a fer més fort el projecte de la Unió Europea. Moltíssimes gràcies.